It's really an honor and a pleasure to have this conversation with Demetris, if I may. I will give him the floor to say a few things about himself. We met long time ago when I was young and I had long hair. Yes, believe it, I did, in Arizona. But now he's probably one of the few individuals in Cyprus, along with the queen of sustainable development, Arabella, who actually put Cyprus on the map constantly in the areas of innovation, technology, and AI. So, Dimitri, I would like to give you the floor and thank you for the support to say a few things about what you do, and then we'll start our conversation.
Thank you very much. And first of all, let me say good morning to everybody. Thank you for being here. I can imagine that you must have been very excited to wake up this morning and be here. So thanks for making the time. I act as the National Chief Scientist for Research, Innovation, and Technology, the Chairman for the National Research Innovation Foundation, and also the Chairman for the Interministerial Committee of R&D of the country. This is one part of my, my daily routine. So when people ask me, what does a chief scientist do? Well, a chief scientist usually looks at, the strategy of research in a nation, looks at where the nation wants to go, and, predominantly analyzes policies, looks into a lot of information as to what can be a game changer and not, how the nation can actually develop sustainably and pursue the goals that are defined in the strategy, while at the same time, develop those partnerships with other organizations, with other nations to advance basically science. The second part of the mission is to actually help Cyprus innovate faster, and that is always a challenge because everybody has a different definition about what innovation is. Everybody has a different definition of what digital transformation is. But we all have one thing that is a common challenge, and I think it's a challenge for everyone, including every citizen. The work that has actually been coming to our offices has only increased. The number of hours are still the same. The number of days in a month are the same. And last time I also counted the numbers of days in a week are the same. However, we are consistently faced with the challenge of finding ways to become more effective, more impactful, and to change. And the other part of the role of the chief scientist, who also is the national chairman of the strategy for artificial intelligence and the task force, is to work together with the community, work together with the experts to make sure that we will have a strategy that's not going to be only good on paper, but it will actually be executable in a way that it can really cause and create substantial impact for us in Cyprus. And as part of that, there is a lot of working and a lot of participation in, as Arabella highlighted earlier on, the participation and where Cyprus contributes, be it in the Board of Governors of the Joint Research Council of the EU or the European Scientific Advisory Forum. Now, what does this all mean? This all means that essentially the chief scientist acts as the CEO of the ecosystem, working very closely with the Deputy Minister of Digital Policy, Research and Innovation, and at the same time advising the President, His Excellency, and also the Minister in making these decisions that help us move forward.
Great. So does AI know it all?
What do you think? Does AI know it all? Let me give you a simple answer I gave to medical professionals last year when they had their forum here in Cyprus. I answered with a very simple statement saying that sometimes some good friends who are doctors, retired, they're in the 70s, they asked me, they said, Demetris, I have my grandchild who knows everything, and then I ask the same machine, that's his friend ChatGPT, how to solve a problem, right, or how to diagnose a specific issue with the patient, and it's giving me a wrong answer. And there is a fundamental answer for that. The reason is that we, out there, everybody hears about ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and Grok, and we think that that is AI. That is not the only form of AI. And that is a general AI tool, which means that it has been trained with general data and it can actually do a few things correctly. But if we want to actually talk to an AI tool that will help doctors or help, for example, the justice system or help the educational system or help, cybercrime, solve cybercrime, we need to actually go into more niche models that are trained with specific data, that are trained with best practice, that are trained with information that they understand the business. And that is the difference in simple language between what we call LLMs, right, which are very generic, and we call specific language models or specialized language models or single shot models. And that is the fallacy that exists out there. So AI doesn't know it all. But the problem is lack of awareness in how to use these tools often creates more problems than the ones that it solves. And this is where we also need to understand that we and all of you, I mean, educators in different industries, each and every one of us has a very important and paramount role to play, particularly because the way we actually interact with systems, the way we validate the decisions they make, the way we validate the data that is on there is very important.
Yeah. So, given the fact that here we have a group of civil society students, academics, and so on, and the theme of our conversation should also take a look at the possibilities of AI for social good. And given the fact that maybe 80% of the industry is controlled by 6, 7, maybe 8 big corporations, what are all these limitations for actually designing AI systems that can contribute to social good and not strictly for profit?
Well, thank you. So I think, first of all, from an awareness perspective, training a model for artificial intelligence and getting it to understand and perform better is something that requires a lot of energy. So I'll just give a number that will help you also understand the social impact or the impact on the climate and sustainability. In Southeastern Europe, when we go from Portugal all the way down to Cyprus, Jordan, North Africa, France, Italy, Greece, etc., we had approximately 487 data centers 6 to 12 months ago. And those were simple data centers. Each one of these data centers, for them to run and be cooling down, they need 1.4 million gallons of water per day. When you aggregate that, that basically is enough water that could be given to 15 million people. So we're trading water for energy to power the models. So the one thing we all need to realize is that we as humanity cannot afford to be building a model in every country, to be training the model ourselves, because the scale versus the impact versus the benefit is not going to add up. So we need to understand and look at the dilemma and see efficiency versus scale versus impact, and understand what we do sovereign locally versus what we let others do. So this is, I think, the advantage of having 6 companies that are building models and they're continuously working on them and they create a baseline is a positive area. Now, what we need to do better is to really start understanding where we advocate and when we build the necessary, I would say, guidelines or let's say areas and provisions so that the models we use give us the impact for social good that we need. And I'll take an example. Sometimes we advocate about having too much control over data that we basically want to share. On the other aspect, we have a powerful technology called artificial intelligence that can help us save lives today. So I'll give you a very simple example that is a real example that goes back to social good, and I'll use healthcare as an example. 2 years ago, actually in 2023, November, as the chairman of the Research Innovation Foundation, I had the pleasure of taking the entire organization on an offsite, and we went to the planetarium. The scope of that workshop was to get everybody in the organization to understand what is AI, how can I use AI safely. During the break, the lunch break, Three of our team members went over to just light a candle in the church. One of the lady had fainted. So our admin runs and says, Chairman, we have a problem. Please come. I walk inside the church and I see a fellow member of my team from the office that was in discomfort, looking up. She hadn't passed out. She was aware of the surroundings. And I asked her, I said, I'll use a fictitious name. Jenny, do you know where you are? She answered yes. Do you know who I am? She said yes. After going through a series of diagnostic questions, I realized that something was not going on well with the specific colleague. Why? Because she was yawning. So knowing that I would have to circumvent the GDPR sector, I asked her a simple question saying, my wife is a doctor. Could I please have her on a WhatsApp video call so that she can tell us what to do? She said, Chairman, please. After talking with my wife for 2 minutes, who was actually very kind to intervene from her, patients, she tells me, please give her a glass of water, and when you step outside the church, give me a call. So what was that? That was a hint that something needed urgent attention. So as I stepped out, I had a very clear opinion saying, it is most probably a 90% mental stroke. You actually need to get her into the hospital, and you need to make sure that this happens before the next hour, because the only injection we have for anti-clotting, right, will only work if it's provided in an hour and administered in an hour. So when I talked to commissioners who regulate privacy of data, I asked them this one question. Do you know that an artificial engine solution using computer vision could look into your eye and, based on its dilution, understand with a probability if it's a stroke or if it's something else, and if you need attention immediately without asking you if you're a female or a male, if you're staying in a specific address or not, what's your age, right, and where you're from. That part of the privacy data is not required. Yet, we often, many times, right, make it very difficult for us to make model and solutions and technology work because of fear. So what I'm saying is that artificial intelligence has tremendous potential to help us across each facets of our work. Either it is education. Last month, I was invited to Brussels on one of the president's events where we talked about the role of artificial intelligence in vocational training. Yes, AI can be a superpower for people with disabilities because it can actually complement them with natural capabilities that they cannot adapt very easily, but that can bring together what we call, a balanced human plus experience. And what we do see, and there are studies that actually confirm it, that people who do have certain types of disabilities and work with artificial intelligence and they're complementing a part of that can actually be even more effective compared to regular workforce. So what we need to also understand, though, is that to get to this point, we need to go down to the point where we understand what a security guardrail is. And that is a line by which we don't want to pass, because that line can really create negative implications.
Yeah, that's a very good example. There are, of course, case studies where AI can contribute to social good, and this is one example. Another is education in some aspects, not all. However, given all this setup, I mean, we know that with all technologies around, for a very long time, the history of the educational technology field was that technology, there is a big digital divide. However, now there is this narrative that, everybody can access AI or simple tools and do things. But what can we do to ensure that AI does not increase the digital divide and actually gives opportunities to everybody for participation, for democratic citizenship, for having a voice, and so on? Because you travel the world, I mean, you live on a plane, literally. So I'm sure you see a lot of case studies around the world of how it's used.
So thank you. Let me just say that, it starts by first of all understanding where and how technology can help us, right? So these Gen AI tools, they're not good for everything. However, they can actually create tremendous benefits. So I'll go to a second example before we say, within the schooling ecosystem. When you actually have a discussion with, you call civil servants, and you say, we are going to think about introducing AI, the first question you say and you hear is fear. When you discuss about it in the private sector, you hear the same thing. My position is very different. I say that if we use artificial intelligence correctly, we will be able to actually create better work-life balance. And I've demonstrated it within my organization at RIF. So at the RIF, I've created a pilot. I call it the digital advisor of the chief. It understands how I look at policy. It's trained with all of the speeches and articles that I've written. It basically understands everything about our national strategy, the policy on space, the policy on everything. So when I ask an officer to actually go out and compare the national strategy on artificial intelligence of the United Kingdom, of France, Finland, Greece, Estonia, UAE, and Singapore, if they do it manually, it's going to take them 2 months. But if they use this as a tool, it's going to take them 1 hour. And the next 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, they're going to look at the quality, they're going to look at the sources, they're going to look at, the model isn't polluted with, data that is misinformation, and moving forward. So to go back to your answer, to your question, we have to look at the challenge ahead of us, and we have to actually create a strategy where some tools are going to be purposely fit for specific tasks. Some tools will have to be prohibited, and their use is prohibited because they actually create uncontrolled risks. And I will say this, I will give this as an example. 5 years ago, cybercrime was only at the disposal in the hands of people who were very, very good at cryptography, and security and cyber warfare. Today, you could actually use an application by Meta or others. You can take a picture, you could ask it to animate the picture, make it a video, and you can create something that looks very, very real, but in reality it's not. That is a new problem we're dealing with, which is called synthetic media, right? And adding to that, there are other problems we call synthetic identities. So what I'm saying in conclusion is that as we are creating the national strategy, which will be out soon, there is guidance as to how we develop, at the schools, at the level of, the professionals, where we actually want to create an observatory for actually measuring those skills and to really have a feedback look into moving forward. But it all starts by understanding, right, where we want to be in 10 or 15 years. And I use this just to give you an example. I'm very confident that with the tools we have, if we have a strategy that takes us holistically, and I think when I mean holistically, meaning it needs to actually come as an organized policy that basically helps an entire nation or an entire industry build together towards that goal. We could go at some point of time in 10 years to a shorter working week. We could go to a point where we could have triaging, right? Where a citizen who has heartburn in the middle of the night can actually interact, authenticating with the machine, and says, I'm not feeling very well. And through the next 3 questions, he gets a barcode and says, don't go to hospital X, go to hospital Y, and the cardiologist is actually going to see you, right? Why? Because that's how we move forward. And then I'll go to our elders, right? Elders today are facing increasing levels of, let's say, threats by scammers, by fraudulent activities. And it's very hard, right, to actually tell the difference and what is real and what's not real. So to stop the digital divide and make sure that we're not increasing it, we really need to come back and really make sure that digital first becomes, I think, a priority agenda for all of us. Mm-hmm. And it has to be that way because these technologies are not going to be only co-pilots. We already live in a world where we have very advanced companies that are hiring, that are having their first AI-enabled CEO. Some of them have already gone to a point where CEOs that are AI enabled are really building workforce. So regulating this technology, which is what we're doing with the EU AI Act and making sure that the right frameworks are there, educating people correctly and building that certain sense of urgency is very important. And I think that goes back to, I think, society, right? Less stress, better balance between work and life. That leads over into a cycle of improved healthcare. And there is a circle. And I agree with Arabella. We need to go back and really not just look as, the citizen as a professional. We need to see the citizen as a whole, right? And that helps us to get there. We really need to look at every part of it as a journey, right? And these different journeys, once we go back and we take a holistic approach, we can actually stop the digital divide. We do have a plan. You're going to see it in the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence that's coming out for consultation very soon. And I'm very sure that that is going to really help us accelerate in the right way.
Yeah. That's very good. I'll pick a story you mentioned and an example, and I'll share a personal story with AI. I lost my father about 40 years ago, okay? And at that time, there were no recordings, no voice, no video. And now that I'm an expert in AI, I took a photo of him, and I always had this aspiration so that my mother, sister, and all the women in the family, don't take it as sexist, okay? It's just to listen to me, because they don't listen to me. So I took his photo and I had him in a video, converted into a video saying, you have to listen to Bambos because he's right, and you have to apologize to him when you don't listen to him, okay? So I did that little video, and it's actually worked out fine. So my mother, she's 81, looks at the video, and like poker face. The video finishes, she turns to me and goes, you need medication, son. So this is AI for social good, I'm telling you, okay? So anyway, but I think that it's unbelievable what's happening with AI and all the things. And now that I work also, not only schools, but we offer training to executives on using AI for decision making and all the things you described. It's unbelievable, the potential.
Before you go there, let me give you two sides of the good and actually what may be a risk. My mother saw me like a year ago, and she asked me, she says, I see you talking about artificial intelligence everywhere, son. What is it? I said, it's a tool that can really help you do everything. She says, really? I said, what's your favorite food? She says, moussakas. My mother is from Greece. So I said to her, do you know that moussakas is not only a Greek dish? She said, impossible. So I showed her how to use it, right? And she realized that the actual recipe in variations is, offered across 12 different countries. So after spending half an hour with her, she started, getting more interest. 2 weeks later, I see her and she's interacting with two of our personnel at home, and she's speaking to them. They speak. One speaks in Sri Lankan, the other one is from Nepal. So she started using it as a translator. And then, that's the good part. My dad comes one day and he says to me, I need some tutoring because your mother is actually using ChatGPT to create objections to verify if I'm telling her the truth. Just 2 days ago.
Very nice.
But see, even at the age of 75, right, we can cross the distance, right, very, very fast. But what's even more important, and this is where we actually need to be also very, very careful with the technology. My wife was actually a doctor at the American Heart. She called me 2 days ago and she says to me, you have to call your dad and tell him not to listen to your mom as a doctor. I said to her, what? She says, well, your mom used ChatGPT to diagnose if your dad needed to go to a doctor or not. And she advised them accordingly, right? So I had to have that discussion to explain that it is not replacing a human. And we need to understand, and this is what I'm sharing with everybody here, is that yes, the technology is making leaps, but the technology is not perfect. The data in the technology is not accurate. We don't know, right? It's our obligations to understand at what level the data is, at what quality it is, and to even develop techniques in what we call machine learning, so that we can unteach the models where they use data that pollinates or contaminates a learning model. Yeah. But what is even more important, and this is an advice and I think a request to all of you, is take the time to use your critical thinking to help people understand that ChatGPT or an AI machine is not a human, and it cannot understand the difference between danger, right, and pain. And it's not there to actually provide validated response. So human in the middle, right, is something that we advocate for, and it comes up to these good uses of AI that we need to do.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that because one of the big issues in AI is human oversight. So how do you balance the human oversight within the process of using AI, and how much relying and how you use that? But let's first ask quickly, how many of you use AI? Look at you, you are all avatars, huh? Great. So you see, they are all experts. So the next question then will be, how often do you trust the response you get from AI? Anybody wants to speak out? What do you do to verify that? Yes.
I try to approach it from a critical perspective, but a lot of the time, I try to approach it from a critical perspective, but a lot of the time it comes to a point where you genuinely do not know what to think because you start approaching it with a limited capacity because it's getting better at manipulating you to believe in it. So even if one was to verify the sources independently, because of the the way it speaks to us, it becomes very difficult to always remember that.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to comment? Yes.
You?
I see a few, I agree with you not to demonize any of the new technologies, but I also believe this is a technology that we have never experienced before, something that we really don't know where it can bring us or when can go without us. One of the things in these difficult times that I'm reflecting upon is the tendency to sycophancy, I think is called. So the tendency of large language models to keep us in our biases and keep on saying that we are right and reinforcing our convictions. So, which is definitely something we don't need because it's, feeding our narcissism, our, like need of being reinforced in our beliefs and so on and so forth. So my question to you would be, what do you think, beside, of course, the environmental implications that you mentioned at the beginning, plus, the social implications of possible isolation, mental health? I mean, we know of cases that were extremely serious. What would you isolate as the two most pressing ethical issues that are currently unresolved?
Okay. One more.
Well, regarding trust in the AI, I think using the AI should be our new soft skill, because even prompting the AI well will get you a better result. Although we always need to fact check everything they give us, but prompting needs to be a skill, because as long as you prompt the AI well, you get an improved result each time. So I think we can control it as long as we know what we are looking for.
As a consultant, right, with an independent perspective, and that starts putting the model into a specific type of mode that moves forward. What we are doing here in Cyprus, we have it designed into the strategy. It's part of the surprise, I think, or the good thing that many colleagues will look at. We are basically advocating for building a Socratic model of AI. And when we call Socratic is, I'm not going to give you an answer. I am going to challenge you and help you reflect and think and move forward. Now, this part was actually something that I tested in another another committee that was hosted in Paphos with the president's event in March, where a doctor asked me and they said, well, we use AI and we're going to use AI as decision support systems to basically help us diagnose specific cases. But what am I going to do? Am I going to tell my patient that this is what AI is giving me as an answer to your therapy and this is what I'm going to give you as a doctor? So our response, and this goes back to the human in the middle, is what we want to do is to make sure that the human makes the decision. But the human is supported by the data, by the evidence, that's evidence-based, right? So that they can actually make a better diagnosis and to have that accountability. Now, going back to I think pressing issues we have more than 2 pressing issues, right? But I will just say that I will just use, I think, a few that can be food for thought and reflections, and happy to discuss them offline with, with you and Mr. Vrasidas. So one of them is our tendency to relegate accountability very easily. So people will give Gen AI or a model the accountability, right, instead of really doing the work. And you see this every day. So I think the one thing that we need to actually resolve from a policy perspective and also from a corporation's perspective is how do we embed accountability into the model so that even the humans that are using it are not pollinating it, but even humans are not just asking the model to do the work. And this I'm saying because we are essentially feeding the model with too much misinformation that essentially nobody may check, right? And it eventually will become official trained data that creates the bias. And I'm saying that because if we start with accountability, we go to a next step, which is even which is a core part of making AI models work correctly, and that is to make sure that the data is not biased. And there is a lot of work to go there. Yeah. But the pressing issues on the model side, from my perspective, is definitely security and ethics. And we need to build guardrails into these models to actually make sure that they do not surpass a specific part, right, when it comes to security and ethics, and they do not really go overboard. And the reason I'm saying this is because AI is not the only technology that is the thing that we haven't really experienced before. Around us already we have what we call IoT, Internet of Things. We have some other technologies. And we are already, as society, investing a lot in what we call quantum computing, which actually may give us 1,000 to 10,000 times more power at a cheaper rate. And then when you have that, there will be no password that will be, protected easily. You will have a machine that is so powerful that can do it. So building the guardrails of security, building the ethics into these learning models, and actually making sure that the accountability and bias are there are 4 pressing issues. And to give you a thought on that direction, there is a lot of work that is being done on responsible AI or trustworthy AI, but there is no common view yet at the global level as to what is the common framework for responsible AI. So there is a global council on responsible AI that is working. In the EU, we advocate for responsible, let's say, practices and risk management through the EU AI Act. And these are pressing issues that we need to work more on and make sure that we develop a framework that is robust, that will decrease the risk of all of the challenges and the challenges that are there.
If I may just contribute to that also, and going back to what you mentioned, the issues are many, bias, gender bias, minority bias, marginalized group bias, hallucination, ethical issues, GDPR, copyright, whether Gen AI models use the copyrighted work of some people to generate content that others use. The list goes on and on. I think that one of the things that comes through is what is called, what the chief scientist mentioned, this accountability, which relates to first transparency and explainability, meaning to know on which kind of data are you based giving me the response. And the second is to explain, meaning to be visible to the user, how is this answer generated. Some large language models in particular modes, for example, Perplexity or even ChatGPT, Gemini Pro in the deep research mode, they start giving you a list of all the things they are scouting before giving you the answer. That's one step. It's not sufficient, but there are a lot of ways, and we don't have time now to discuss on how in the, as Demetris mentioned, in the context designing, which is the most important, not the prompt, but actually designing the context within which Gen AI will respond. You can put a lot of filters to question. So always tell, for example, find two contradicting points and two supportive and give me all the evidence behind it. You know, there are a lot of things you can do. It's not bulletproof, but it's a step forward, you know.
I think just 2 points. I think 2 points before, I mean, we go to the next point. So one of the challenges we have with the 6 companies is that they're moving so fast that essentially, you know, the power that comes in with the model is so fast. And if you go down to a school and you start standardizing on one, essentially you have a model that will actually be dictating the rate of pace of change we move forward. So what we are advocating for, and I think Europe is rightly doing so when we talk about digital sovereignty and building the models, those tools will help us pace and manage the change, right, at the point where we can actually cope with it. And the reason I'm saying this is because the machines are already, and these models are very, very powerful, and they can actually change and alter what I call, you know, that balance of equilibrium between critical thinking and not. What is important for us is to continuously redesign the way we engage the models in a way that we facilitate and we help people, right, across all. It's not just the schools. It's to develop the critical thinking, it's to maintain that, and then, you know, eventually leverage that as an advantage. And then we talked before about you know, the opportunity for, I think, improving civic society and also for social good. So for me, I think we are not doing enough in really working in developing AI as an anticipatory intelligent tool. We use AI and we're building solutions, right, and digital twins, evidence-based policy making, etc. But when we actually talk about, you're right, redesigning and really looking at the platform and using this technology as an anticipatory tool, it can really bring game-changing possibilities. And I think that's where we need more investment, more stakeholder groups in to come in, so that we can really, you know, I think design the future and then future-proof it.
Right. Anybody else would like to ask, comment quickly? Please keep it brief. We only have 5 minutes left. Can you pass on the mic, please, there?
These technologies and the countries that don't have these access, will this create a big gap? And if this gap exists, will it be Europe or the West's responsibility to civilize these third countries?
Okay, that's a very good question. What's your next question? Just out of curiosity.
It was also about that we've always feared that it will be doctors, but it will be computer scientists who will lose their jobs. But would it be doctors as well? And what about politicians? Because we've talked about training and policy as well. And we've also talked about these, in the start we talked about there's only 7 to 8 big firms that hold these, the knowledge, or like hold the infrastructure. So who decides what knowledge comes to us, or who determines whose knowledge is this that gets to us? Because if it's medical, it's something really serious, as we've discussed, like it's someone's life at cost. And lastly, if we assume that we're on a planet where water is not an issue, should we just keep on creating data centers?
So I'll try to answer the 3 very, very fast before we go to the next. So we're already working on technologies that will really make it more efficient for us to actually, you know, power the data centers, liquid powering, and a lot of other technologies. So there are designs that are, you know, building by design green data centers. Your first question, there are already initiatives where countries are coming together to really make infrastructure available, so that basically we start addressing the digital divide, right? And this is not just Europe, these are other groups. In Europe, we have a very ambitious, let's say, direction of travel with the gigafactories and also other countries. Then you see the Middle East has also built, you know, their mega mega factories, right, on artificial intelligence. India hosted an Impact Summit in February where they advocated for making part of their own infrastructure also available to Africa and others so that they can actually start, bringing together that. So there is a collective direction moving forward in that. And the third question you had about the models, it's not just the big 6 or 7. And the reason that that's not is because already right now we have understood that for us to be able to harness this technology more efficiently, we go to something called the specialized learning model, or the SLM, and those SLMs are much better for sovereignty. Those are basically now where you see most of the industry focus. They're smaller, they're more efficient, they're more effective, more impactful. And just to give you all here a short glimpse of what Cyprus is doing, Cyprus has actually moved from Global Innovation Index number 28 to number 25 in the last 3 years. We currently have an ecosystem that I've mapped, or the Office of the Chief Scientist has mapped and has actually communicated. We have about 116 companies, institutions, R&D centers that are already building solutions using artificial intelligence and scaling out to the world. And we do have two very interesting ones that are on the healthcare. And these are now moving to the next phase where we go on to SLMs. Next question, please.
Sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We are students, professor from the American University of Beirut in Paphos. In the fall semester, I designed a class called AI Literacy. I teach philosophy and literature, and we're going to co-teach it together with a computer scientist who's going to explain the nuts and bolts of how AI works, various types. I'm going to have them reflect critically, and we have a third professor who's going to do the kind of business managerial side. But I'm curious, what would AI literacy in Cyprus look like? What is something that we should definitely take into consideration in teaching this class? Do you even believe that this term AI literacy applies? Is it already obsolete? But what would it entail? How do we make it more local in a way that the previous speaker was also demanding in education, right, to shape this new student of the future in a way?
Very good question, and please make a note to do invite me when you do actually announce those, and I'll make sure that I'll help you also amplify the reach and also be part of them. I'll go with, I think, a personal view that I share, right, and I'm very vocal about it. Artificial intelligence is a language, right, and eventually, we're making very big strides, but in 5 years from now, everyone out there should know how to use the basics of artificial intelligence, be it a doctor, be it an accountant, be it a consultant, be it every student that goes to the university. So I think the AI literacy term is very valid. We just need to have a discussion and see how we contextualize it, and also work with the Ministry of Education, right, to make sure that we are moving in one direction that's unified. But I would actually take the opportunity of addressing before. While I was sitting there, I heard that we have what we called a lifelong learning strategy. AI is one of those things that we will actually have to make it part of our everyday journey, because it's bringing competencies and capabilities to us that are very fast, right? It's changing, I think, the amount of capability we have, and it's a perfect example that I think will really help us reimagine what literacy also means in the new world, right? I mean, you cannot be considered literate if you expect, a calculator to do simple things for you when you have AI that can give you solutions that, are there and you don't understand them. On the other side, if you ignore that a system or a tool can give you these type of complementary capabilities, you have a fundamental disadvantage when you go out to the world. So these are things that we will have to discuss and go down into more detail, and I think that's a discussion that we also need to have with our other partners. Next question.
I think we are zero time, so I think you have to go.
Maria,
Unless if you have the time.
We have 2 or 3 max. Okay.
Okay.
So next question, please. Thank you.
Hello. If we are to combine environmental awareness with an understanding of how things are healthy or not healthy for us, since yesterday we were talking about the health benefits or not of the safety characteristics of digital products that we need to be aware of, and using AI, shouldn't we be also aware, if we're literate about technology, that we're also destroying the planet by using AI all the time?
We actually need to increase the awareness that it's not just AI that's destroying the planet. Every choice we make has a contribution that, changes, but we need to be more aware, how we use the technology and what is the cost benefit. And as we rightly said earlier on, AI everything isn't the answer, but at the same time, we also need to go back and really assess how do we make those decisions. And I will give you, I think, a simple strategy copy from my life in the world at AWS. At AWS, when we were faced with challenges, we were taught to actually view problems in two simple worlds. If a decision can actually move, and you can make a decision that that cannot be reversed back, you actually have to make a one-way door decision. That's where you need data, evidence, more reflective thinking to think about. We need to start thinking in a way and saying, what does the implication of this have? On the other side, we have two-way doors where we're really faced with challenges that we really need, very strong help at this point of time. And that help really helps us create something that will have an impact. And I'm saying this, I'll give an example. If politicians could actually use AI today as a powerful simulation tool that could run 1,000 simulations on a scenario and come back and say, these are the 1,000 options and these is the cost benefit of everything else, they would actually have 1,000 policy options that would make, the decision much stronger. That is a cause that you can invest in. If it's to use AI to answer a Google search or another item, that is not an efficient use of it. So yes, to get there, we need to actually make people more environmentally cautious, more cautious around the sustainability of the planet, more cautious around, the harms that all of these technologies also create, because they can actually, change the entire climate. If we start building, for example, mega or data centers with terawatts here, all of a sudden in 5 years' time, we will be looking and facing at, a complete distortion in terms of climate. So, but it all starts with educating, I think, the public more.
Great. Thank you. So it's been a pleasure.